In 2024, we've seen a fair amount of winners so far, whether that's Max, Leclerc, Sainz, Norris, but of all things considered, what he's put in versus what he's got out, Sergio Perez is the real winner of 2024. Because amazingly, Red Bull have announced that they will be retaining Sergio Perez on a new 2-year deal, which will see him through till the end of 2026. And despite what most consider to be the best car on the grid, he is still sitting in 5th place in the driver standings with no wins. Strange. So whilst I understand why they've retained Sergio Perez for the cause of the Drivers' Championship, at the same time I find it strange why they've retained him for their quest for the Constructors' Championship. But either way, Checo's agent has got to be the greatest salesman in the world. Now first off, anything that goes on at Red Bull right now revolves around Max Verstappen, and he's the guy that the whole team has got to try and keep happy right now. Especially with Toto Wolff apparently trying to lure him into the Mercedes cave of eternal promises. And one massive thing I can imagine right now that is keeping Max happy is having Checo as his teammate. And yes, there are a lot of people who say, oh, he's rubbish, he's always finishing behind Max. Fire him and hire someone else who can compete against Max. And that is exactly why Max and Red Bull want to keep Perez around. It's better the devil you know. Obviously not saying he's the devil, but with Checo, Red Bull knows what makes him tick. He's a known quantity at the team by now. And ladies and gentlemen, let's not forget, Red Bull are about to enter a whole world of unknown quantities. They'll be losing Adrian Newey in the first quarter of next season, so they won't have him to play a part in the 2026 regulation changes. They'll also be losing Honda power, again, admittedly, and switching to a Ford-backed Red Bull powertrains, running everything in-house, and who's to say how that will go? So with all of that stuff going on externally, why throw another beehive into the nursery and sign a driver which is also going to upset your star driver? By the way, I do think every driver needs to be challenged. I want to see the best competing with the best. And that is from a fan's point of view, but if I was Christian Horner, I would want to create an environment in which my star driver, in this case Max Verstappen, can operate at his peak performance. And yeah, sure, you could bring in Lando Norris or Carlos Sainz or even Fernando Alonso, and everything might just be okay. But I sense it's far more likely that it would cause a complete and utter meltdown. Even a clone of Max Verstappen would annoy the other Max Verstappen. Bringing a top, hungry, race-winning driver alongside Max, what would that look like? Well, take what we've seen at Alpine, multiply it by Senna versus Prost, add a sprinkling of social media. It might just be enough to destroy the planet. Now, as a content creator, I would love to see that lineup because it would give me material for months. But trying to think as a team boss, it would just tear the whole operation apart. So with all these unknowns flying around, Red Bull have to strap down everything that might move. And I think they have made a very safe, intelligent, calculated decision by keeping Sergio Perez on. Because I think we saw a realigned Checo at the start of the season. There were no notions of championship battles, and it seemed they understood what his job was this time round. We saw second place finishes right behind Max, which is him working to his job description perfectly, and also securing a third place, which is fine. And I know, yes, he can sometimes be inexplicably slower than Max. And also he could be doddering around in Q2 or hovering around outside the points. But it's when it all comes together and you throw in the whole package, that is what has won him his new contract. The bottom line here is that Red Bull are not looking to sign the second best driver they can find to go alongside Max. They are trying to find a driver who can be teammates with Max. And yes, he does have a new 2-year contract, but I don't think for 1 second that is a straight up, says it on the tin, 2-year contract. I think there's a lot more to it. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a 2-year contract that is heavily layered with things like performance clauses, points clauses, all that sort of thing. Even the second year in his contract could technically be an option that has to be activated. Either way though, I don't really know why we get so worked up about contracts still. Surely by now we've worked out at this stage F1 contracts are worth as much as Lance Stroll merchandise. Now, despite his ups and downs, I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Checo. And when everything is right in his head and the car suits him, he is very, very fast. And even though I just banged on about him being the safe option and also the right option, I still find it strange considering the queue of drivers that Red Bull have created for this very seat. A snip of that list comprises of names like Yuki Tsunoda, Daniel Ricciardo, and Liam Lawson. All have had that Red Bull carrot dangled in front of them for some time now. So it's intriguing to think what they must be thinking after hearing this news about the contract extension. Yuki, I'm certain, has a plan arranged outside of Red Bull. Daniel Ricciardo must kind of be thinking that this is the nail in the coffin now. But who I'm most gutted for here is Lawson. For someone who showed so much adaptability and talent in a short time, surely deserves a drive somewhere, and in fact RB have to give him one, otherwise he's a free agent. If RB don't give him a seat for next season, apparently he can go anywhere he wants. But this is now a deal that was most likely going to see Perez through to his retirement. And even with potentially a pay cut or a contract brimming with all sorts of clauses, it's better to be in his position at the front rather than be at the back, where you can kind of slide out of memory. And yeah, I'm sure Perez could have gone to a variety of teams next season where he would have been given status as a priority driver. At this stage in his career, he could have become the main guy at Haas or Sauber or even Williams. But you know what? Credit to him, he would rather still be in his position towards the front of the grid. The thing is as well, Perez also carries a large amount of sponsorship with him, and can you imagine how much Red Bull merchandise they sell in Mexico and the United States? Well, unfortunately, they never released those figures, but it has got to be significant. Moving forward for the remainder of this season, though, it's going to get very interesting, I think, for Perez and Red Bull. The RB20 seems to have lost some of its sting that it had earlier on in the season. And if we get into a position this year or next where Ferrari and Red Bull are more or less competing on the same level, Red Bull manufacturing an overall weaker driver lineup just to appease Max Verstappen could cost them the Constructors' Championship. Because it's like the Perez decision is relying heavily on Red Bull having a dominant car. If next year we say that Ferrari catch up with Red Bull and they're more or less on an equal playing field, Max could hold his own, but I also sense the Checo could just get swallowed up by Leclerc and Hamilton and the Ferraris. And therefore he won't be able to provide any considerable support to Max, which would ultimately lose them the Constructors' Championship. Which is why Sergio Perez, at this stage of his career, signing a deal like this, with all the other options out there and all the other names that Red Bull considered, is just such an enormous win for him. Perez has got to be the luckiest man on earth right now. Absolutely nobody in 2023 would have ever thought they would be seeing Sergio Perez in a Red Bull in 2025 or 2026. But yet, here we are. But also now maybe he can finally relax and put in some good drives, knowing that he's settled in and not worried about his future anymore. And now maybe, finally, he can buy that house in Milton Keynes now that his Red Bull contract is secure. Anyway, fair play to you, Checo. Let's see how things go for the rest of the season. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching again. Please be sure to click that little subscribe button below and also like the video if you enjoyed. And also, why not drop a comment there below as well? It'd be great to hear from you. Anyway, as always, I'm Paul, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks.